So my dad got a job at FSU in 1968. This is home now, so this has been home for me for most of my life. And we bought a fishing boat, we got a canoe. As soon as we moved, we started exploring this area, and I really haven't stopped since. Yeah, my name is Doug Alderson. I'm an author and naturalist and a photographer. I started writing magazine articles when I was 18, mostly about Florida, and I started writing books about 20 years ago. And I like to integrate the culture, the history, and the natural beauty of Florida in my writing, as well as some of the environmental issues that we face. When I see seagrass, I see life. So many species depend on seagrass beds for their nursery grounds.
Seagrasses are a vital species. They've been around on this planet for 100 million years. It's an ecosystem that affects a lot of people, whether they know it or not. About 1 billion people live within 30 miles of a seagrass bed. Seagrasses can help improve water quality by collecting particulates and absorbing nutrients. They can protect coastal systems from storm surges and erosion, so that helps protect people's livelihoods and their properties. Seagrasses provide a lot of seafood, so billions of dollars of seafood every year is produced by seagrass ecosystems. Seagrasses are certainly not one of the more charismatic ecosystems like coral reefs. A lot of people will just boat right over them and not even notice that they're there, but when they're casting a line or when they're waiting out a hurricane, the seagrasses certainly have an effect.
Yeah, I'm a little spoiled up here in North Florida because the water's in better shape. We still have our threats, but along the coast here in the Big Bend, we have the most pristine seagrass beds. We have some of the better water quality. We have an incredible number of fish and sea turtles and manatees and different marine life. It's a combination of things. For one, there's a lot of protected public land, so we're in the St. Mark's Refuge, and so really from this refuge all the way down to Yankeetown, there's about 150 miles of primarily public land, protected coastal land. So the fact that we don't have in this stretch pristine beaches like white sand and crashing waves, that's a good thing because this part of the coast was not developed for that. You can kayak or boat along this stretch and it looks very similar to how the Native Americans viewed it and how the Spanish first saw it, and it really hasn't changed that much.
My name is Savannah Berry, and I'm a regional specialized extension agent here at the University of Florida IFAS Extension, and I work a lot with the Florida Sea Grant program. And as an extension agent, I work a lot with communities and resource users to make sure that they understand the resources and can take measures to protect them. So in terms of seagrasses, I've done a lot of outreach about water quality and seagrass scarring and good boating practices and things like that to help everybody that depends on our seagrasses here to treat them better and help make sure that they stick around. Geographic region of focus is the Nature Coast, which we define loosely as Hernando County up to Wakulla County, so St. Mark's basically down to about Weeki Wachee. And this area, we're very blessed with really vast seagrass resources, and we have a relatively low human population, so we have a lot of natural resources that are still relatively intact here. But they are facing increasing pressures from climate change, population growth, and development and things like that. So even though we don't have some of the problems that people think about in other areas of the state, it doesn't mean that we can be complacent. We need to still take action to protect what we have.
They're a very clear indicator of an overall ecosystem's health. Like when the Chesapeake Bay has seagrasses and it fluctuates, it can tell you something about what's going on in the environment, specific areas that might be polluted.
I think another thing about seagrasses is that they're also kind of a general sentinel of coastal quality. So if you have good seagrasses that are persisting in an area, you probably also have relatively clean water. You probably also have, good levels of dissolved oxygen and lots of fish and other things that people may value. So I think seagrasses are just kind of a sign of the overall health of a system. And so if you agree that you want your overall coastal estuary to be healthy, I think seagrasses are a good thing to focus on because they are such a good indicator of what's going on more broadly. Pea soup colored water versus clear water.
I'm very aware that in other parts of Florida, some of these species are threatened and they have die-offs.
So the Florida manatee experienced a record number of mortalities, and it suggested that a lot of the mortality was caused by starvation. And manatees typically feed on seagrasses, so therefore the absence of seagrasses or the reduction in seagrass extent in Florida is having a direct effect on one of the most charismatic organisms.
Well, when we think about problems that cause declines in seagrasses, most of them basically come down to declines in water quality and especially water clarity. So sediment concentrations or algal cell concentrations that combine to create turbidity or basically cloudiness in the water. And a lot of those water quality problems are correlated with human population and development and wastewater practices and things like that, all of those things that come along with high rates of development. So when we think about Florida's most impacted estuaries like Biscayne Bay and Indian River Lagoon and areas like that that have had a lot of high profile water quality issues, if we look at those areas, often we see really high human impacts. The fact that those systems don't tend to receive as much flushing from the open ocean as we get here on the Big Bend coast, it means they're just more vulnerable to having these impacts be lasting. So algal blooms and things like that. We really are lucky here on the Big Bend coast in that we don't have highly enclosed and restricted systems, but that doesn't mean that we can't also have impacts from things like red tides and other harmful algal blooms. In fact, we just recently had to have closures of the clam farms and oyster farms here in Cedar Key because of red tide. So it doesn't mean we're immune to it, it just means that we're a little bit less vulnerable.
It might surprise you, but boating in Florida can have a significant effect on seagrass through propeller scars. One boat driving through a seagrass bed by accident can leave a scar that lasts for years and can erode out, so it won't only affect the seagrass that directly cut, but if the currents are right, it can actually expand the scar and destroy more seagrass. And it can take years to decades for the seagrass bed to recover. It's a very sensitive ecosystem. Now you multiply that times 100 because especially in some congested areas, there are lots of boats moving in the same area. People are bound to make mistakes. And you have a significant direct impact of human disturbance on seagrasses. But in the wider scope, the problem affecting our seagrasses are nutrient loads, the increases in waste, the increases in fertilizer that increase algae growth and create an environment that's really inhospitable to seagrasses.
So the water quality of Florida is vital for the species. It's really important for humans too, for our health, as well as the health of the economy, because millions of people make their living on the tourism of Florida or the commercial fishing, the recreational fishing, taking tour boats out. I mean, the beaches of Florida, all that depends on water quality. And if we didn't have that water quality, if it's not clean, many people may stop coming, and that will affect millions of jobs.
You know, it hits small businesses first. So tourism industry, charter fishing, hit really hard by algae blooms because they're really the culture of Florida. It's these people who are multi-generational fishermen who miss out on the ability to continue the work that their grandparents and great-grandparents have done because of things that they can't really control that development has caused. We've witnessed multiple ecosystems in Florida and multiple charismatic species suffer from the increase in development. It's not that we can't necessarily have more people in Florida, it's just that each person needs to be causing less pollution, or we need to have the infrastructure in place that reduces human disturbance to the environment.
So I get this question a lot about seagrass restoration. Why can't we just go plant it back? And in most cases, the reason that seagrass is lost from an area is because light is not reaching the bottom. Because again, about those water quality issues that we talked about before with turbidity, with algal blooms. So if you routinely don't have enough light reaching the bottom and seagrass died off because of that, anything you plant there is also going to die for the same reason. If you're talking about trying to restore seagrasses over a very broad scale, the place to start is restoring water quality by doing some of these watershed practices in terms of stormwater management, low impact development, better wastewater treatment, fertilizer management and ordinances and things like that, that reduce the input of nutrients and sediments into our coastal systems that allows light to reach the bottom. So basically clearing up the water. And when we do that, very often we see seagrass will come back on its own, but only once you've cleaned up the water clarity should planting really be on the table, unless you're talking about small-scale physical damage caused by boat propellers and things where you generally overall have good water quality, and the only reason the seagrass is lost from that area is because of a boating accident or a propeller scar. And then in those cases, we do see that planting seagrass can be effective, although there are even methods that we can use to restore those without having to plant seagrasses. So planting seagrasses has a role, but it's really pretty far down on the restoration spectrum. You really need to focus first on the water quality stuff, which is expensive and it's not as sexy, so it can be hard to convince people to focus on that. But I think it's pretty clear from the science that that's where we need to be focusing our efforts and our energy.
So individuals can do a lot to help improve the health of seagrass ecosystems. And a lot of what they can do is either working with different organizations, nonprofits, or government agencies to monitor seagrasses, help restore seagrasses when the opportunity becomes available. They can work with nonprofit groups, government agencies, academic institutions, and help advocate for seagrasses on a political scale.
I think it's safe to say that seagrass is always going to be providing some service. Is that service going to be the same across all seagrass meadows? No, but seagrasses are extremely valuable. Every time we look at a seagrass meadow and try to quantify benefits, we find benefits. It's just that not every seagrass meadow has all the benefits that are found in every other. And I think that actually shows that we need to preserve and conserve more of our seagrasses so that we still capture the full suite of different services. This meadow may be very good at removing nitrogen. That one may be very good at trapping carbon. So in order to derive all of those benefits from those diverse sets of seagrass meadows, we need to conserve as much area of seagrass as we can, because I do think it's safe to say that whether it's fisheries, whether it's nutrient cycling, whether it's turbidity reduction, they're doing something good for us. So just because they're not doing every possible good thing that we could list in every possible location, it doesn't mean that they're not worthy of protection. So I think that even just that basic fact is enough. We don't need to be going out there and creating extra reasons to protect seagrass, because even just the basic ones that we already know about should be enough, and I think are enough. If you talk to the average person, they would agree that seagrasses are something that they value and would like to protect.